Well, Sherm Swanson has made himself known already. This portion of the symposium. I'm the other Sherm. I'm Sherm Karl. I'm with the BLM at the National Operations Center in Denver. Today I'd like to talk about BLM's 2011 Rangeland Resource Assessment, which is based on the NRCS's NRI. BLM has partnered with NRCS to monitor the status and trend of renewable resources on rangelands. In 2011, we started doing this, and we're using the National Resources Inventory Grid to collect our data, and we call it a landscape monitoring framework. So I wanted to talk about our first report, which is preliminary, but it's on our 2011 Rangeland Resource Assessment, which is our first report. The purpose of the BLM Rangeland Resource Assessment is to report on the status and condition of renewable resources on federal rangelands managed by BLM. And the need for the BLM Rangeland Resource Assessment, Gordon Taves outlined some of this already in previous talk this morning, but the Secretary of the Interior shall maintain on a continuing basis current inventory of all public lands and their resource and other values, and that comes out of our BLM's Organic Act, which is the Federal Land Policy and Management Act of 1976. And in 1978, the Public Rangelands Improvement Act reaffirmed that inventory of our public lands, but concentrated on that we should provide an inventory and identify current public rangeland conditions and trends and make those available to the public. And that's the Secretary of the Interior and the Secretary of Agriculture, so it applies to BLM and NRCS and the Forest Service. So I'll provide a little overview of the Rangeland Resource Assessment. It's organized a little bit differently than NRCS's Rangeland Resource Assessment, which was done by regions. Ours is done by ecoregions, so I'll provide a few ecoregional interpretations. We have the same attributes and indicators that NRCS is using on their Rangeland Resource Assessment. You'll see that we are using bare ground, soil aggregate stability, intercanopy gaps, non-native invasive plant species, and the attributes of rangeland health, which come out of the interpreting indicators of rangeland health. This is just a map of the ecoregions that we are using in the BLM Rangeland Resource Assessment. They are a combination of level 2, level 3, or just level 2 and level 3 EPA ecoregions. And we are reporting the results of our status and condition of the BLM rangeland by these ecoregions. This is a table that shows the number of points that we have sampled, our sample locations, off of the National Resources Inventory Grid. We've got 879 points that were sampled, sample locations spread out across those ecoregions that I just showed you on the map. Some of the ecoregions you see have very small numbers of points sampled. We actually took out a couple of ecoregions because we only had, actually one ecoregion we only had 0 samples, and one we had 4. So these are the 9 ecoregions that we had enough points to represent a statistical estimate. And those points represent the amount of acres of BLM rangelands you see in the far right column. So the Rangeland Resource Assessment represents about 150 million acres of BLM rangelands in the western 13 states. It does not include Alaska. This is similar to Sherm Swanson's question he just had about 10 minutes ago. If we are sharing the same attributes and indicators with NRCS's Rangeland Resource Assessment and the methods we're using to collect the data, and the answer is yes. And the attributes or indicators we are including are on the left, and we've got bare ground on rangeland. We've got patterns of different amounts of bare ground on rangeland. Rangelands with abundant non-native invasive plant species, and those are all measured with a line point intercept method across all points. We have rangelands with presence of non-native invasive plant species measured with line point intercept, supplemented with a plot area species inventory. Rangelands with intercanopy gaps using the canopy gap intercept. Rangelands with soil aggregate stability using the soil aggregate stability test. And although not very readable, I apologize, on the bottom are the attributes of rangeland health, biotic integrity, soil site stability, and hydrologic function that we are measuring as to moderate to extreme or extreme to total departure on rangelands. We're using the interpreting indicators of rangeland health protocol for that. Now, why did we settle on these attributes or indicators in the Rangeland Resource Assessment? Why did we select these? We have a mandate to report on range condition and the trend in range condition over time. And the range condition reflects the quality of rangelands and their ability to support various levels of productivity. These indicators we have selected, we believe, infer productivity and changes in productivity on BLM rangelands across ecoregions. In the National Research Council Rangeland Health book, 1994, they equated productivity with the capacity of rangelands to produce commodities and satisfy values on a sustained basis, and it depended on those ecological processes that I have highlighted here of soil development, water cycle, nutrient cycling, energy flow, and structure and dynamics of plant and animal communities. So we've taken the productivity, and it depends on these ecological processes, which, by the way, are also the foundation for our fundamentals of land health the Bureau has. And we have correlated or taken the attributes and indicators that we are measuring on the BLM rangelands and equated them with the ecological process that they represent, be it soil development, the water cycle, nutrient cycling, energy flow, and structure and dynamics of plant and animal communities. And so these are how, at least how we are believing that the attributes and indicators represent those ecological processes that we have to sustain for productivity of our rangelands. So the unifying theme of the Rangeland Resource Assessment, the interpretations you're going to find on the indicators and the attributes at the ecoregions, the unifying theme is productivity of our rangelands. Just a few highlights. This is a map showing the proportion of our rangelands in ecoregions where we have biotic integrity that is moderate to extreme or extreme to total departure from reference conditions. And you will see quite a few ecoregions with no data. That's not what I wanted to highlight here, but we don't have, in some cases, we didn't measure any rangelands that had this condition, and in some cases we had a trace. So either it's a trace or it's no rangelands that were sampled that had this condition as to why those ecoregions are blank. So what I wanted to show here is what we do have for the ecoregions. For example, warm deserts ecoregion has quite a few, about 10 to 25% of the rangelands in the warm deserts have biotic integrity that is at moderate to extreme or extreme total departure, which we are inferring to have a decrease in productivity on those rangelands, lack of capacity for energy flow, and the water cycle and nutrient cycle. Another map showing hydrologic function, which is behind the green up here that you can't see. This is hydrologic function that's at moderate to extreme or extreme total departure. And again, warm deserts, the darker the hue on the map, the more of the rangelands have this condition. And again, warm deserts have the most rangelands with hydrologic function at moderate to extreme or extreme to total departure. This indicates lack of capacity to safely capture and store water. This is a map showing soil site stability that has moderate to extreme or extreme to total departure. This is the third attribute of rangeland health. And again, warm deserts ecoregion has the most rangelands with that condition. And this infers excessive soil loss on rangelands. So approximately 7 to 17% of the rangelands in the warm deserts have excessive loss of soil. And similar to a graph that, or a map that Gene Fultz showed, this is rangelands with abundant non-native invasive plant species. You'll notice that warm deserts had the most rangelands with compromised biotic integrity, soil site stability, and hydrologic function, but they don't rank as high with amount of rangelands with non-native invasive plant species. Only at about 5 to 10% of the rangelands in warm deserts has abundant non-native invasive plant species. Where we have the most is in Central Basin and Range ecoregion right here, and then right behind it is northern cold deserts. Not surprising. And what we mean here by abundant non-native invasive plant species is where we have sample locations where 25% or more of the foliage is non-native invasive plant species. That's what we mean by abundant. So those are just a few highlights that we have in the report. The emphasis on our reports is going to be, this first report is just baseline condition status, and we're going to be doing trend reports through time, and that's really where we're going to have more interpretations about how our productivity of our rangelands is changing across ecoregions. So a few take-home messages. BLM has partnered with NRCS to use the National Resources Inventory to monitor status and condition of federal BLM rangelands. We're using a standardized set of attributes and indicators measured across all sample locations on BLM rangelands, and they are also being measured by NRCS on non-federal rangelands. We're using standardized methods to measure those attributes and indicators, the same across all BLM rangelands, and those methods are also being used by NRCS on the non-federal rangelands. And we're using a statistically valid study design to do so. In the future, BLM intends to use the Rangeland Resource Assessment to report on status and condition of federal BLM rangelands to Congress and the general public. And then BLM, starting last year, 2014, we committed to a 5-year rotating panel of 10,000 sample locations, 2,000 per year, measured for those attributes and indicators. And we're planning on doing trend reports every 5 years, beginning in 2019, where we have 2014, 15, 16, 17, and 18 data that we can use to provide a trend report in 2019. So this is going to be an annual effort that we do, hopefully with sustained funding. and then we're going to provide reports every 5 years. And BLM intends to work with NRCS to explore a common rangeland resource assessment that covers federal BLM rangelands and non-federal rangelands. We haven't figured out how we're going to do that yet, but BLM intends to work with NRCS to pursue that. Thank you.